Hi, I'm Jason.
I'm Fran.
This is Bo Peter.
And I'm Nicole. And this is Marketing for What Matters, where we explore how marketing paired with a regenerative mindset can uplift humanity, heal the planet, and still achieve profitable business growth.
Hey guys, Fran here with episode 7 of Marketing for What Matters. I'm really excited to introduce you to my guest today. Her name is Brianna LePiane, and she is the founder of Sustainable Product Sales, which is a consulting agency that helps businesses sell their sustainable products and also create long-term growth strategies that are sustainable to both themselves and their business. I'm really excited for you guys to hear this conversation. Brianna has had such an interesting background in sustainable materials, has worked in the sustainability space for a really long time, and just has so much information and passion to share. We talk about how it's important to demystify jargon in the sustainability space, about some exciting new changes that are happening with emissions reporting. And the thing that I think I most enjoyed about this conversation is that Brianna is a real humanist, and she talks a lot about how to create sustainability, not just in your business practices, but also in your life, and really just has a holistic understanding of what sustainability means. So I really think you guys are going to enjoy this conversation. And without further ado, here's the episode. Hello, and welcome to Marketing for What Matters. I'm your host today, Fran, and this is episode 7, I believe, of Marketing for What Matters with our guest, Brianna LePiane. She is the founder of Sustainable Product Sales, a consultant firm that helps their clients and businesses build sustainable product strategies and also create long-term sustainable business growth within their business. So Brianna, thank you so much for being here today. I just wanted to kick us off by hearing a little bit more about you and your journey before you founded Sustainable Product Sales, because reading on your website, I felt very kindred with the sentiment, as a young person, of feeling sort of overwhelmed by where the world is, wanting to make a change, but also not wanting to blow up the institutions that currently exist, or knowing that we probably can't. And that's something that's really just inspiring to me. And I'd love to hear more about your journey and how that mindset ultimately brought you to the work that you do now.
Yeah. So it started back when I was serving tables. So I graduated from university. I had a degree in Latin American studies, and that was a fancy way of saying I speak Spanish, basically. And I was feeling a little adrift, like just, making ends meet, not really knowing where I wanted to go or what I wanted to do with this. And then 2 opportunities came across my field of vision that changed things. One was that I engaged in a volunteer program through a friend of mine to translate for Indigenous youth in the province of British Columbia. They wanted to do an exchange with Guatemalan youth. And I absolutely put my hand up and I was like, heck yes, I want in on this. Mm-hmm. And it was kind of in that the Guatemalan youth were here. There was, I think 14 of them that did a visit here, touring around different regions. And that was like, I kind of got this bug in my ear that was like, I am so privileged. And I don't want to waste my privilege on things that do not matter and don't move the needle on things. And I don't feel connected to. Like, if I can find a way to drive forward work like this or something similar, how do I do that? And there wasn't at that time, we're talking like, 2009, and sustainable business wasn't really a thing then, but the bug was in my ear of like, okay, something needs to change within me so I can be more in alignment with the work that I want to do. And then I got a job being a national ambassador for a hotel chain here in Canada, and they had a CSR program. And at that time, corporate social responsibility was a file folder on a desk. It wasn't a job. It wasn't a department. There was, and they were some of the first people leading it. And I was like kind of this like ambassador for this program. And I traveled across Canada to visit different hotels and engage in different local regional programs that they had on the ground, helping their local communities. And I was like, well, this is amazing. And I didn't love being in front of the camera, which may come out through this recording. Like, I was like, I'm a doer. Like, I want to
Yeah, you're like, get me behind it.
Yeah, like what's behind all of this and how is
Yeah.
this really working? And so those two experiences were formative in like, a young sort of 20-something-year-old Brianna mind that was like, something needs to change out here. And then I went to business school because my theory was I wanted to get into the belly of the beast. I was like, how does this work? And something in business felt really broken to me. Like, what is going on out here, people?
Yes. And are you demons?
Yeah, well, and they're not, it's just largely unchecked greed, which is like coming from a place of like need and suffering. You know what I mean? It was like, like there's a lot of healing to do.
Yeah.
But also if I can convince people to spend a few more dollars here rather than there, knowing what going here will do for those people involved, let me try that. And so from there, that's when I got into compostable packaging. After that, that's when I got into, working with Fairware and looking at supply chain and ethical sourcing and, reusable materials. You know what I mean? Like, it's like it just started cascading in about 4 or 5 year chunks of time. And so that's why I've been in it for a minute. It's taken me 10 years to kind of get here as an active participant in this, maybe longer, but it was like, it didn't exist, right? The ladder hadn't been built for me to climb. So it was like, okay, I guess I got to build it, was kind of the vibe.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So you're recognizing this need, right? You're recognizing this sort of ignorance of information or just lack of desire or whatever. When was the moment that you realized, okay, the best way for me to step into this conversation is to be a leader in this conversation and start sustainable product sales and actually be able to be sort of driving the change in decision makers that businesses are making?
I don't know if I have yet. So I'm gonna be totally honest. Like, I think there's I'm in that stage where I now, with context, I'm like, oh geez, I just thought a lot of what I know was kind of out there already, or people were aware. And the more I have conversations with folks, because, the echo chamber that I'm in is quite sustainability focused. I'm always learning. I'm always like coming up against the edge of my knowledge base. And so I'm in that mode, and I'm sure there's a lot of folks out there that feel that way of like, I still need to know more to be a leader in, right?
Of
and
course,
that, like, if you're a business coach out there and you want to coach me through this, hello to you. Like, help me out. Because like, it's a thing, right? So I think I'm always learning, but I do think when I started to just talk to more, so COVID, right? So COVID shut down a lot of what was happening in conventional business. And that's when I think a lot of us had a bit of a wake up moment of like, what am I doing? And I recalibrated. At that time, I was an account manager at Fairware, and it kind of became clear to me that I needed to do more, like urgently. I need to do more than sell organic cotton tote bags. Like immediately, I need to help as many people as I can, start talking about this, start building this, getting out there, creating good sales strategies. Like at the end of the day, I'm a salesperson. Like that's what I'm cut for. So I help them with the sales part, which is also, people hate sales. So it's a delight for me to work with them on like, you don't hate sales, you just have bad experiences or negative connotations of what this means. Otherwise you wouldn't be in business and have a product that you want to sell. You are in sales, right? So that's when I started to put the pieces together of like sales and sustainable products and the gap between them. And a lot of people that do really good work in sustainability are like environmentalists and scientists. Not salespeople, right? Nor should they be. So like pairing up with those people and being like, okay, I'm here to learn from you and help you like get this to market and grow your market share. And now I'm kind of pivoting away from the startup culture and the community there and going with folks that are established in small business to be like, you're here, you're a necessary part of the economy. You want to make change, like let's talk about it. Let's figure something out.
Yeah. And, that reminds me, I think it's on your LinkedIn, but it says like bridge builder or something. And I feel like the work that you're talking about really like speaks to that you're creating these crucial connections that just don't exist yet because people don't know that they're even a possibility. But, on that note, I want to ask you because I do, I know we've talked about this in our initial conversation too, but just what you were speaking to, how often people have this negative reaction towards sales or this negative sentiment about it, that it's just about making money, and sucking resources out of people and, competing with people. But obviously that's not the whole story, right? And those are just maybe the worst people, or like, of course there's bad examples in every group set, but I'm curious about like that journey of sort of reconciliation, because from talking to you, it sounds like you were quite an altruistic young person, as was I, and I feel like we probably share similar sentiments. And so, yeah, like how have you reconciled that beast of like, this is just where we are and this is what makes society turn, and how do you communicate that to people or get them to kind of reconcile with it as well and still feel like they're being authentic in their brand?
Mhm. Yeah, I love this stuff. Like my overall vision is like I want to create solutions that are so good and so integrated. You're a part of it, whether you are consenting to it or not. Like
Yes,
that's
right,
where I'm
yeah.
headed, right? That's
Yeah.
where I'm headed. And so I that helps me a lot because I don't care if people don't have time to talk about sustainability. There's a million things I can talk about that are more like product focused or benefit focused, like they'll help you make you money, like whatever. Like I can use that sustainability angle or not. And the trouble seems to be people get really lost in the weeds with it. And so the beautiful tension is, how do you make it accessible, true and honest, super deep and thorough, but not bombard people with it? So that's a sustainability in sales kind of thing. But then the sales on its own, Fran, it's like a healing. Okay. Like it's like a healing because sales has no barrier to entry as a job, right? No barrier to entry. And it does tend to attract people that are financially motivated. Let me be super clear. There is nothing wrong with being financially motivated. It does not make you bad. It does not make you greedy. There's no negative thing inherent in being financially motivated, right? Just because you can speak numbers and you're driven by them and you want to like do right by your family or like whatever the thing is, like it gets evil when you want to take things from other people to feed yourself with it. Like if you're not generating, if you're not generative in it and you are actively like taking from other in a way that's malicious or isn't clear or whatever, that's when we run into hot water. So the trick with these folks is to clean that up and to just like help them redefine what sales means for them and create a sustainable sales practice. So like if you are an introvert, bless your heart, like I get it. I got you. Like, don't worry. Like, there's still a way for you to be an entrepreneur, sell your product or service, and then not feel like completely like blown out on your bandwidth for the day. It's about like, then you got to pair up with some really clever marketing folks that can help bring people in. And then you can start to feel warmed up to the conversation by seeing those connections, being like, wow, this person really gets what I'm trying to do. I'm excited to speak with them. Your sales meetings might be like 2 or 3 half-hour chunks instead of like an hour-long presentation of you talking 100% of the time, which is like a sales faux pas. Don't be that sales guy. Like you want to ask questions, leave it open, create a dialogue, right? And then do restorative practice. Like don't book yourself back to back to back all day if you're an introvert. Like chill, breathe it out, like reconnect, sit with a book for 5 minutes. You know what I mean? Like if you're doing it well, you shouldn't have to like push on the accelerator so intensely that you're just like completely like just slammed, because what that does is it actually, you lose the energy behind your own project, right? And so that means that you have a pricing issue, which I would be delighted to help you with, right? Because if you're not pricing so that you're working 20 hours a day and like you have no time to like sleep or eat or no money, it's like, oh, okay, we got to back this up and look at the business model. So that is like a benefit of getting like me as a sales consultant, also with this like business brain that's like, whoa, is this working actually? Let's take a look. And there's so much bad pricing out there. Like I can't even tell you, like if you are someone who's doing direct to consumer sales and you have a website and you're selling, I don't know, handmade soap or whatever, like you want to go 4 times your COGS minimum and include your labor, because you need to leave some margin in there for distributors to make some money too. So don't start with 20% and think that you're good. Like it's comebacks to the pricing and the like entire orientation of your business. So that is a very long-winded way to say I love being like a little bit of the like dark horse in the sales community. It thrills me. It thrills me.
And I so appreciate that sentiment of like meeting people where they're at, because I think that is often missing just in our broader sustainability conversations. It's always about like telling people why what they're doing is wrong and why they shouldn't be doing it, rather than being like, okay, where are you as a human being right now? What's straining you? What resources do you have? What headspace do you even have? And how can we still make change in that space? And I don't know. Yeah. Like I just love that, because I feel like that speaks to the way that we can actually change and progress as human beings. Right. And I so appreciate like the holistic perspective you have about like, where are you as a person right now? Like, regardless of your business, regardless of the world, like, are you good? Are you stable? Are you caring for yourself so that you can even be making these decisions and work effectively? But
yeah.
To I know I definitely wanted to talk about definitions with you. And while we were talking, I mean,
You saw
like,
my list, eh?
I know,
Sorry.
I love that stuff, because I think it's so important. And even me as an uninformed consumer have seen the way that these buzzwords get thrown around. Like I saw you mentioning zero waste, and I'm like, I always was like, is zero waste real? Is it real? Can it be real? I'd love for it to be real. But anyway, first I'd love to just ask you, like, what does sustainability mean to you? Because I think often when we hear that, we think of environmental things, or using resources properly. But I feel like what you're speaking to when you talk about your sustainability strategy is like sustaining your like health and mindset and your holistic being, and like sustaining of sort of these like human traits of ourselves. And I think about that a lot, about like, what does it mean to sustain humans in the sustainability conversation? And like, yes, we want to, save the world, but like, what about the people who, I guess I like think of something, it's like, let's get rid of all like landfills or something, but it's like, now there's communities of people who live next to those landfills, and like, are those people being considered in these decisions? Is it just being slapped up as like a universal good? But I know that was a really long answer to that. But yeah, I just would love to hear like, what does sustainability mean to you in a global way, in a broad way?
Yeah. So I think it's really important, clear, and succinct. And I love the way that you frame the question of like, to you and in your view. And I will answer that. I just think it's important for your listeners to know there is a definition. And I am really tired of people like not participating things because it's hard to define. Like, get over it. Start something. Do you know what I mean? Like, I've had it with like the red herring of like, oh no, it's hard to like talk about. Like, I don't care. Like, go get it. Like, go learn. Just try. Right? Yeah. So sustainability means taking this action. I can do this action forever without compromising the future generations' ability to take the same action. Okay. Like, that's like just what it is. Like, it's not, and lots of people use this definition, and that's not just me. It's like all over, all kinds of things. You can, whatever, find some resources for that. But, that's what it is in my practice. And I kind of think of like my consulting as a practice, if you will. You are included in that future generation. And there will be times where you have to pedal to the metal, and you got to do 18 hours a day, and you got to, if you're an entrepreneur, you know what I'm talking about. Like, there are those times. Now, it depends on how you're cut. Usually an entrepreneur, and I've been struggling with this myself, like, I have to like literally put down in my agenda and in my journals and like on sticky notes, like, this is your time to rest, honey. Like, this, right? Because if you are okay for a minute and you don't have like a bunch of stuff lined up, to like breathe it in and use that time for visioning, thinking, staring into blank space, meditating, whatever, swimming, like, I don't care. Like, just do whatever it is you got to do to integrate some rest into your personal practice with entrepreneurship. Sustaining also means like grounding, like what grounds you in your work, and being sure that everything that you're doing comes back to that touchstone. Because one of the biggest challenges with entrepreneurs is that they're like, everything is a shiny object. We're going this way and that way. Like, there's so much change we want to do. There's so much stuff we want to do. But the problem is that it was like the fastest recipe for burnout is like doing a million things at once and not finishing a single thing, and not being grounded in your intention and your purpose, And this is the biggest catch that I have to figure out for myself, Fran, was like, okay, what am I naturally gifted at? What am I good at? And it's okay that things can be easy sometimes. Not everything's going to be easy, but like it is okay to do the lightest lift and call it a day. I had a rule for myself for about a year where my task list was like prioritized in such a way that if I only did one thing, that it would be the most important thing. And so each day I would feel like something was moving forward, because part of what I was hitting a wall with was just like the overwhelm of so many things to do. Right.
Yeah.
And when you're a solopreneur, that's like, you're the one doing it all. And like,
yeah, no one to ask for advice.
right. Oh, or like, is it your natural skill set? Like,
Yeah.
I appreciate you taking a look at my website, but holy like that, not a marketer.
That was scary.
Not
that was hard to
a
do.
marketer. No, that's you. I'm sales, right? So it's like, even the technology stuff, it's like so many great tools out there. I love my tools. I love integrating systems and making it all work and flow. But like, I often have help for that, because like there's people that are just better at it. So like, rest, natural skill set, staying within intention, like revisiting that is all part of like, so the sustaining you, so you can keep doing your business, your sustainable product business, your social impact business, whatever it is. So I think that's really it's really important, and it also helps you show up in sales conversations better, because if you're rested and you're good, you can hold space for others. And there's so many sales I've closed in my life on the basis of like just simply hearing people about their problems and where they're at, and really listening for the change that they want, and then going away and doing the work, blah, 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 and then I present that to them of like, I really heard you when you said this. And they like, just off the top of them feeling heard, of like, I really needed a win with my boss. Thank you so much for this. And I'm like, dude, like put your name on it. I don't even care. Like take it, it's yours. Right. Like that, then you're giving away stuff that, and you don't feel like you're fighting over your resources, or, you know what I mean? It's just like a different approach.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, just talking to you, I feel like you're such a humanist, and it always is, you know, sort of like, it makes me feel like reverent for humanity in a way, when I feel like I see these through lines of like the people who are making the most change and are most successful, and or at least most speak to what I think matters, are people who, regardless of what industry they're in, have a deep curiosity to understand people and to understand what motivates and drives them and why they are doing the things that they do. And it's just so interesting how that, you know, piece of your humanity ultimately, like you're saying, makes you just be able to be a much more effective leader to people. And
sales can be fun.
yeah, right. So I really want to keep talking about definitions, but I also want to move on to actually some of like the specific work that you do. I think we, you know, have already talked about it in sort of a broader scope, but I'd love to just hear more about like, what is your process when you first are setting up with a new client? I know you have like a very specific step-based process that you follow, but like you're meeting someone for the first time, like what's going through your head and what are you thinking and what questions are you trying to answer?
Yeah, so that's thank you for that question. I do have a 4-step process that came about sort of organically after I had been through it a few times, and I was just trying to create some framework around this is where like sales folks you know, like we need a system. If you meet really naturally gifted salespeople, they are great at building connections and terrible at reporting. You're not going to get both, which is why you need a system or a good sales manager, preferably both, to help those naturally gifted people corral their efforts and like have tasks so that they don't have to remember everything. You know what I mean? So it's like, this is my own exercise with me of trying to figure out what makes this work. Off the top, I'm listening for why people do what they do. And a lot of that good training, like, it comes out a lot in startup communities when they're pitching about their story or their journey. I think that's true for small business as well. And I think bigger businesses are now realizing like the whole purpose-led movement in bigger business is about that. It's like revisiting your why. in my 4-step process, starting with the first step, there's an internal and an external to everything, right? So internally, as your business, stuff is going on. Externally, you're communicating something, right? So I think that's important to delineate, because people kind of think it's all about the external. And if you do that, your operations will fall apart. And I'm big on operations. We haven't actually talked about that very much yet, but I'm partnered with a few people that are operations experts, because I'm deeply passionate that it has to work well, and that you need to have a healthy operations to have healthy sales. Like, those things go hand in hand, right?
Yeah.
So the starting with the why, and then what we do then is we start to get client-centric. And this is where a lot of like the sort of more scientific minded people really struggle. And you know, it's a little bit like, well, they should just know and it solves a problem, and like they kind of assume that they built something awesome that solves something, it should sell itself. And it's like, well, client centricity is kind of rooted in like, Fran, if I'm trying to sell you something, like, I am asking for your time. I'm asking for the privilege of information about how you work, and I'm requesting that you trust me with your problems in the first place before we've even started talking about product, right?
Yeah.
And so it's an honoring of like, I am actually taking a resource of yours, which is your time and your trust, and to just like sit with that and be like, listen, would you be okay with somebody just like barging in through your door and just start like yammering off why their product is amazing? Like, probably not.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So just think with the empathy that is natural in that about how you want to approach these folks and who are these folks. And that's kind of baked into the why, and leading into client centricity is like, who are they? How do they think? You know, and like, that's in a consumer way. I'm more business to business, which is like, how does this business work? Like, where are they feeling friction? Where are their budgets tight? Like, where are their problems? What are they struggling with? You know, like, who are the right buyers? What is their budget? What might that look like? And not really high up in the funnel is just looking at like how big a company is, where they are, and what they sell. Like, it's like what you can filter for. That's pretty much it. And then as you go down the funnel, then you start to add layers of like, okay, they have a impact report. Okay, they have a partnership with a nonprofit. Okay, we're starting to get signals here. There's value alignment. So once that starts happening, that helps you with client centricity, because the job is put yourself aside and start thinking like, well, how can I help these folks really? And then from there, it's do the work. So now that we're like in this dialogue with folks, who else is like that? How do we create a framework for doing outreach to the tune of like, whatever, 50, 100 leads a week? Like, how are we doing this? Like, where are we? Are those the right people in the room? How are we tracking this? What are the systems behind this that are getting this organized? What does our follow-up look like? You know, and like making sure that, you know, like, okay, if I'm doing 100 this week, well, you have to do follow-up. Everything falls apart in follow-up, right? So that means you're doing 100 next week and all of the follow-up. So like, are you prepared, and do you have it calendarized, like all that stuff about doing the work, internal and external, right? Like, and then following up and making sure you deliver super well is like obviously part of the thing. Staying on track is the last step. So like, those tools and those people that can hold your feet to the fire of like, you said you're going to do 100 this week. How did it go? Right? And like, what did you learn? And what does the follow-up look like? What are the marketing and sales assets that are ready to go that speak to this person's problem? What is the next step? And like, from there, you can start to refine and be like, okay, well, of the 100 people, like, you know, 20 of them I have meetings with, but only 2 of them are vaguely interested. Like, okay, well, who are they? Who do they work for? What is their role? Like, what is the entry points? And then you refine. And that's like more of a new product sort of layout, but it works just as well for established products as well. Like, just like, it's just a bit of tweaking about those internal and externals, and like staying organized is really kind of the biggest thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh. I mean, you talking about the follow-up, we're currently working on some scripts right now for some follow-up that we're doing with the client. And it's just like, how are we going to manage this? I don't know. Maybe we need to talk to you. Seriously. But I'm curious though, you know, to bring us back to definitions, because I'm obsessed with them as you are. How, you know, we've talked a lot about how like definitions are very important, and they're often used in these sort of like, you know, catchy way. Like it doesn't necessarily mean anything. And I'm curious though how that changes in like the B2B landscape versus direct to consumer. Like do you find that consumers are more, I guess, naive, or like people can get away with more or less naive, or like do the words matter more in B2B? I'm curious because I imagine that in B2B marketing you wouldn't necessarily be like, like a commercial of someone stepping into a cool lake and being like, the sort of like ethos imagery that we often do to consumers.
Yeah, the like palm with the like plant coming out of it with the dirt. Like, yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me reframe a little bit.
Yeah.
When you become super like intelligent about what you're doing and you are wise about it, you can be succinct and clear. Mm-hmm. If you're throwing jargon at everybody, that's like, for me, I'm like, whoa, you have so much to learn about coming into clarity, about your knowledge, about what you're doing. So just because you were succinct and speaking at a grade 3 level doesn't make you stupid. In fact, it's honoring all the work you've done to get there, right? And if you can't explain what you do to your mother, we got a problem, you know? So like, and I practiced this. I literally, my aunt was over a couple months ago and I was like, she's like, what do you do? And I was like, oh, I'm glad you asked. And I was like, I help businesses with sustainable products sell them. You know what I mean? Like, just like really get it clear. Yeah. And then save that passion, save that insight for the next opportunity to dive in deeper with someone. Save it for content, save it for everything you want to keyword on your website, throw it in blogs, like get as complicated as you want in the deeper dive, right? So like coming out clear and succinct actually honors the intelligence of all the work that you've done. Okay. So like, I don't like, and the other thing I want to say, especially about consumers, people are not stupid. Okay. Like they're not, they might be hurt. They might be lost. They might be confused. They might be angry, but we are living in the information age, people. They are not stupid. Yeah, so like, do not treat consumers or your buyers as if they're stupid, because it just will make something emotional happen in that space. And that's a you problem, bringing that in. So like, cool your jets about speaking down to people, and just remember, like, you are bringing people on an educational journey when you're selling a sustainable product. Okay. Like that's like why I do what I do. Like these are not conventional products. These are going against the grain. They're making a change. They're doing something different, and it requires a bit of education to really get it. Right. And so I think there's that. I also think emotional intelligence is massive in this space and needs to be discussed more. I don't really know, like, just like holding that and just remembering that people make emotional decisions typically, like they do, right? Yeah, so absolutely. Just remembering
almost
exactly. Exactly. So I think a direct to consumer businesses, like, oh, bless your hearts, like that is hard. Okay, that is hard. Like I look for a couple key buyers that I really get on with and that get what I'm trying to do, and like that's my community, and you know what I mean. So it's like to just say that en masse and at scale is like it's really difficult. There are some jargon, like this industry, like the sustainability industry, if you can call it that, which I don't like. It kind of is, but it's also kind of not. Like sustainability is more like a framework that can be applied to just about any industry or business, right? But I affiliate with the sustainability industry because we're a bunch of nerds out here trying to solve problems, and we typically get together and talk about it. So there is a community of us. If you want to call it an industry or not, it's up to you. But like the deep nerds out here, like we're trying to figure out how to speak to people in a way that like communicates it's a complex problem. These are complex issues, and everybody wants a silver bullet or a simple solution to complex issues. I'm telling you, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. We need everyone firing on all cylinders for every solution they want to approach all at the same time. And your solution and your problem that you're trying to approach is no bigger or better or different or deserves more than somebody else's. Like we need to think more collaboratively about this and a little less competitively about this, right? So like open it up in whatever you're doing. So like say your piece, but then also like pause, listen, and ask for like what other people are doing, because it will make you better at what you do. If you know upstream, if I'm upstream, oh my God, jargon. You're like, what about the jargon? I'm like, here's a bunch of jargon. But like, if
upstream for us. No, I'm kidding. You don't
like there's like these issues around like, the material supply, right?
Mm-hmm.
People are on that supply chain. The supply chain is a reference to a bunch of materials and logistics, but mostly people that are bringing you products to your door. Yeah. So if I know that upstream, my recycled polyester, or rPET for short, is coming from someplace I don't know where, and I don't have any transparency about those people being treated well, well, now I'm engaged with social issues, not just material issues. So like, what I'm trying to get at is the jargon is trying to articulate complexities, and complexities are inherent in what we're trying to solve. And yet get into some coaching, get into those feedback conversations about like, how do I make this succinct? And how do I make sure I'm clear? And how do I stay open and listening for what I'm not accounting for? And like, even the stuff about how do I choose a framework or a certification or whatever, like pair with experts on that. Like, don't try to figure it out, or you'll waste a lifetime of all this jargon that we've created a sea of jargon to match a sea of problems. So like, just cut through it a little bit with some experts, talk to people, and just try to like, you know what I mean? Just keep your head above water a little bit. If you feel like, that feeling where you're like, I'm becoming overwhelmed.
Yes.
Like,
yes, totally. You're like, wait.
Yeah. That's when to pause and like, just kind of come back home to like, what am I trying to solve here? And is there somebody who can help me navigate this?
Yeah. Yeah. I just want to say, I love that point you made. I mean, everything you just said, there's so many things I want to address, but I love the point you made about that, like, simple is not bad. And I feel like, people want things to be flashy or catchy or new, but it's like, sometimes we need to just even know what we're talking about at all. And like, that's where simple comes in. And you're right. Like, so many of these conversations have just become so convoluted, and it's like, I'm like, what does sustainability mean? I know now, but I didn't know that definition. Surprisingly, I feel like I've tried to read definitions of sustainability, but yeah, I mean, that really speaks to me of just like, we're overcomplicating things, and that's why people are losing the message, not because they don't care or they don't want to know, but because they don't even know what you're saying. But so on that point, I'm curious if you could speak to, like, I think you were saying, seeing a lot of jargon, right? That to you is maybe a red flag, or something that you're like, why are they doing that? What else is maybe a red flag, or something that you see often happening in the industry that you're like, that's not sustainable, or that's a lie, or, things like that.
Let me start with what is good.
Yeah,
so
that's great.
Let's start there, and then I'll work my way backwards. Just say what the damn thing is. Yeah. Like, just say what it is and what it does. Like, we don't need to dress it up with like, oh, like natural. It's like, craft paper color doesn't fool anybody anymore. Okay. Yeah. Like, I have seen like laundry detergents that are in craft looking containers, but it's just plastic on the inside. I'm like, what?
I know. Oh my, literally.
So it's like, I mean, sure, like, do the thing if you're going to do the thing, but it's like, it's not really like, just say what it is and do that well. And like, I don't mean like in the sustainability mindset. I mean, if you're making like a biodegradable detergent, just make sure it works super well. Like, it cleans the thing, right? And focus on that, and bake in sustainability into your values, into the corporate values of what you're doing. Don't lead with it. I would recommend not leading with it, because you're going to lose buyers right off the top. You're not going to be able to charge more, even though there's a bunch of research out there that says you will. That's just what people say. Okay. Like, in my opinion, maybe we can find some research to back this up. I don't know. But like, in my opinion, when it comes down to transaction time, they may not do what they said they were going to do anyway. So make it work really, really well. Don't like, just like, say what it is, do it well. And then these like, I guess these like red flags are like like, just terminology that doesn't have any data behind it or certification behind it. So like 100% natural, like, that means it came from the planet. You know what else came from the planet? Everything.
Yeah.
Right? Like, right. I know what you're trying to say, but and I don't like have a lot of, I'm, as much as I joke about it, I don't have a lot of like anger or frustration. There's tons of people out there that are like fuming about all this, and I want them, oh my gosh, like, can those people come at me so that we can have like a forum for those folks? So like we have like a little community of whistleblowers that are just taking care of all this, because like I don't have the energy, but a lot of people do. But like I would say like
farmers.
Yeah, well, oh bless. But that's like, we need that energy to call out stuff like that where there's no like data, there's no certification. And I've also like pay attention to like, what is the biggest lever? Like, let me give you an example. Plastics, just conventional plastics, love a life cycle analysis. A life cycle analysis, or LCA for short, is an effort, an academic effort to measure like the actual life cycle of what a product is, where it came from, how much energy it took to make, where it goes, like all this stuff involved with the product. And so there's these LCAs out there that aren't standardized yet, I don't think, but we'll have to check that. But like they're out there, but plastics love an LCA because they kill at making really good, efficient use of energy. So their carbon footprint is low, but the everlastingness of plastic is not being evaluated in that to the degree that it needs to, in order to make buyers aware. This is an issue. So like plastics industry loves an LCA. Super efficient.
Is that pre-production analysis then? Like it's not including like this is how this is going to impact the environment or for 10 years or anything like that.
Well, part of it is we still didn't even know the end of plastics because they're
exactly right. It's still conjecture.
From what I've seen, and I've only seen a couple really in depth, was like it just kind of stopped at the end of it gets into users' hands. That's not to say all LCAs are built like that, and some of them do try to account for the end of life, but still the energy required to recycle plastic will still, like, you know what I mean? It just like kind of it feeds its own tail.
It to signal that it's a sustainable product or something, or that it.
Well, exactly. So if we are not paying attention to the biggest impact, both negative and positive, about things, we can lose sight of what's actually important here. And so that makes this whole conundrum of these products like impossible to standardize, period. And so we need to stop looking for a way where we can just have like a 5-star review on Yelp for this product and just be like, okay, get it because it's 5 stars. It's like, this is complex, right? And to understand what the biggest issues are with those ubiquitous products around us is one of the first things that we're doing. And it's existing now, right? Like, this is why we're talking about carbon footprinting. Like, this is one of the biggest issues we have to deal with. And we are getting somewhere with how we think about that, how we standardize that. You know, scope 3 emissions are becoming a thing, which is like very exciting and very game changing for a lot of businesses. So it's like,
can you tell us what that is?
Yeah. So something that I probably will footnote with, there are better experts than I to speak to this.
Of course.
The scope 1 and 2 has to do with like your operations and like basically things like your employees coming to work. Like that's like scope 1 and 2 carbon emissions are like what, you know, like what you're doing in-house, and like, you know, what's just outside of that scope. And scope 3 is essentially like what happens outside, like when your products are sold outside of your supply chain. And so like, this is why
in the world.
Yeah. So like, look up what's going on in California, Fran, and like for the sake of this podcast, like I probably won't go on too much about it, but scope 3 emissions, basically, if you're a $1 billion company in California, you have to start accounting for your scope 3 emissions, which means what are your suppliers doing? What are your suppliers doing that are making the products come to you and get to you, right? So this is starting to shift the needle for what needs to be accounted for, which is terrific. And the responsibility, which is desperately needed. But the point is, everybody's scope 1 and 2 is somebody else's scope 3, you see? So if we start taking it in-house for like what our scope 1 is, what our scope 2 is, then we can start reporting to our people that buy our products what their scope 3 is. Does that make sense?
Yes, no, totally. It does. And it's crazy though, because like me, as a consumer, I would just think, and I see those reports, of course all that stuff would be included, right? Like you would implicitly assume that if they're telling you this is how the sausage is made, it includes slaughtering the pig too, I'm curious if you can just speak to that, because that's something that really
Sure.
I feel like frustrates me, because I studied environmental science in school, and I did economics as well, and we learned a lot about like carbon offset taxes and like things like that. And my teacher he very much believed in the American economy, which I'm still dubious about at times, but he was like, this system is amazing. It's going to help save the world. People just need to adopt it. Companies need to be able to track their, purchase and whatever, release their carbon. And anyway, to me, it just all seemed like a bunch of like signaling. Like, I'm like, okay, this company emits X amount over, they purchase a credit so that they don't get in trouble, but they still emitted it. It's like, it's not like the harm wasn't done. It's just bureaucratically it wasn't done. And I feel like I see that a lot with these sort of sustainability initiatives, where like the end goal is more about an ability to make like a bureaucratic assurance, as opposed to like actually about what the problem is, and that's why I don't know. And maybe that's misguided or I'm overstating the perception,
There's a fabulous organization called Blockchain for Climate. This organization is part of is part of a systems change that is needed to get more nuanced. I think what's missing here is nuanced and transparency and accountability, right? And so big companies can often afford to have their carbon footprint measured, right? Mm-hmm. Smaller companies cannot, but smaller companies are what feed big companies along their supply chain. They're often suppliers to big companies. Yeah. I saw this fabulous recording where some of these folks were talking about, they are a big company. They recognize the barrier for smaller companies to measure, and they're actually sponsoring like a consultant to come out and do that measurement for these smaller companies. That is taking responsibility. That is where I'm at. Like, that's what I want to see. And so I think for me, it's easy to say because of like what I pay attention to, what I'm reading, what I'm looking at, about like making kind of a good story of this, because I am seeing better practices show up amidst the chaos. And right now, I feel like the mainstream is just getting used to what the chaos is, but there is more nuance emerging about how we're going to do this. We now agree that we're going to do this is now like how we're going to do this. And so some of these larger companies have, and I'm hearing this, and I don't know if it's lip service yet or not, because it can be, but some of these large organizations are like, yeah, we want to know how to do things better. Like, like the runaround is seemingly up, like in some respects with some major organizations, the runaround is drying up and starting to come home to, because regulation change is coming, we do need to understand where carbon emissions are. And that means we need this data. And if we can't get this data, there's only so long we can take giving the runaround and not being able to get this data. At some point, they're going to have to foot the bill to get the data or whatever. So I think I understand what you're saying about carbon offsets, but I also think like being careful about how we channel our efforts, our energy, and our anger is important. Mm-hmm. And I just don't know if it's that useful of a channeling of our energy and our efforts and our anger, because, if they bought a tree off of Nicaragua so they could emit in China, it's like, well, like, sure, shut it down, but like, don't go blue in the face about it. Like, they don't know what they're doing either. Like, sorry, maybe that's not a thing to say, but like, I think we're all, let me rephrase that. We're all learning and growing. It's a journey.
Yes.
Yes. Right.
Yes. No, but that's, I mean, I appreciate that. That's true. That's important to remember. Like, yeah.
And if you know a better way, tell them, right? Mm-hmm. What's the worst that can happen? They ignore you. They're already ignoring you. They don't know how you feel, right?
Yeah.
Best case, they employ you for a position. So you tell them how they can be better. And I want more of that energy to come up in our business community, right? Where it's like, yeah, like kick and scream and shout or whatever, but do it in a way that's like direct, right? So like, enough with the indirect, just like shame and blame game where we're dragging people through social media mud to just like whatever, clickbait. I don't know. Like, I don't know why people do it, to be honest with you. It's like, doesn't actually do much. But what is more productive is to have direct conversations, like find a few people in that organization and say, hey, look, I'm noticing I do not see any responsibility for all of that you're admitting. I want to evolve your business, because let me take the biggest example that I can think of here, but like energy organizations, okay, like oil and gas and like coal, like these folks are used to, they're in energy. They got to make energy. Okay, like they must evolve because the fossil fuels are limited straight up. So if you're in energy, it behooves you to find a new way to make energy that you can actually sustain. It's just business, people. Like, do the business. Like, figure out the business. So like, if that is like, if you're just like, no, we're gonna just run this into the ground, it's like, okay, well, it's still gonna end. You know what I mean? So it's like, I can't wait for these like transitions to happen where we have like new generations coming up and taking leadership and management roles, where it's just like, you better believe these folks are not interested in doing things the way that they've been done before, for better or for worse, because we're seeing a little bit of an underbelly and backlash to stuff, which is like kind of expected and unfortunate. But like, the point is, if we know a better way to do it, direct conversations, provide solutions, become a consultant, come at them. Just like come at them, be like, I want to help. Like, this is not going well. I can see, I can see you still emitting like a ton. And like, I really would like it if we were part of the solution here and collaborated on a degrowth strategy, which, degrowth. People really have a hard time with this. Degrowth is going to happen whether we like it or not. Okay, like that's what a recession is. It's like we're not growing endlessly. Like, it's just not logical for the planet or for even in the economy. So it's like a degrowth strategy is like, how else can we engage with our customers in a way that is more sustainable, and we can still build trust, sell products. They just aren't this like, crazy growth for days thing. It's like, what else can we be doing that's more creative that nourishes our business and maybe the planet? So degrowth will start to become a thing. Circular economy, I'm sure you've heard of, is a thing now and will continue to be a thing. Circular economy, by the way, is the continuum of where we started with zero waste. So all the same academics, all the same people, all the same businesses, because I was there like 10 years ago in the room when we're like, zero waste, it didn't catch on. And now it's called circular economy, right? So the Ellen MacArthur Foundation kind of...
I think zero is too hard of a number to meet. Zero, that's really hard.
Well, we just need to keep... This is the thing about being kind of in this community, is like, you kind of try something and you throw a bunch of stuff out there and it doesn't land, and you're like, okay, back to the drawing board. Like, same concepts, similar concepts, but like new wording, more clear, more like, you know what I mean? So it's like, I think that is a fun one to name, is just like that waste community and what they've been through to get to where they are is like kind of a cool thing. I think it's something to watch.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like really just talking with you is making me realize that I want to follow these people who are in this conversation more, because I think there is a lot more happening that, your average consumer obviously is not going to be attuned to. And it's easy to sort of, I so appreciate just how optimistic and action oriented you are, because I do feel like sometimes I get caught up in the doom and gloom, and I'm just like, I'm mad at these people and they stink, and it's like, but we can still work within that space, and we're no better than those people if we're just crying about how much they suck, right? Anyway, I want to keep talking about these broader topics with you, but I know we don't have too much time. So I do want to give you a chance to sort of speak to our audience and maybe speak to any small businesses or just companies in general that are maybe curious about sustainability, maybe a little bit scared about it, but wanting to foray or wanting to maybe put some action and intention behind it. Like, where would you tell them to start, or what do you think is the best action or first step to take?
Yeah, I love that. That's so my approach is to look at the most money you spend and the most money you make. So if it's a particular SKU or service that makes you a lot of like, the 80-20 rule kind of thing, or like something that's like, okay, most of our revenue comes from this activity, take a look at that activity and consider how it goes out the door, the packaging, the logistics, what people do with it when they get it. Really sit with that, like watch how that happens. Like if you can do something in packaging that's like, maybe it's not compostable packaging, but it's multi-use. Like I think whole bunches of packaging is missed opportunity, really, not just for messaging, but like, can you turn your packaging into like a phone stand or something like that, that keeps people using everything about your product, keep it in their hands, keep it in their lives longer. And when they're done with it, what do they do with it? And then you are the person in the business that goes, I'm going to take responsibility for that too, and say, this is what we're recommending. This is how to gift it forward. We have a take back program. We have a lending library. It's curbside recyclable, like, whatever the thing is. But like really sit with the downstream of who your customer is. And then once you've done all of that and been like, oh gosh, this is too much, relax, hang on, there's more. Then you look upstream about like, how did this get to you? Who's involved with that? Do you know them? Do you know them by name? Like if your supply chain just dried up tomorrow because like whatever, something happened, you're like, oh, there's a disaster on the coast of blah, blah, and now the shipping container didn't leave. Would you have any recourse whatsoever? Or would you just be like, oh, I'm out of business? Like what is happening up there? And that's when you start to get excited about like what emissions are involved in your scope 3 too. It's like, what's happening? How did it get to you? What is it made of? Who's involved? And how can you as a business take responsibility for all of that? And I think North Americans in particular, the onus is on us. We are sucking up way more resources than we need than anybody else. That's just like what's happening. So like, yeah. And we are business led and we're very corporate and capitalist. And so it's up to business to start looking at taking responsibility there. So look up and downstream at your biggest sellers and what you spend the most money on. So kind of follow the money a little bit. And then kind of decide and like take it to your team, engage your team. Sustainability is one of those things that's going to keep employees with you longer. It's like one of those weird advantages that you didn't know was going to happen. But if you start opening it up with your team, creating like, I don't know, just at least a dialogue, if not a subcommittee about like, what are we going to do about this? Bring other ideas to the table. And then engage with partnerships and experts. Like, don't try to figure this out on your own. Like, if you are someone who makes soap, you make soap. You're not a sustainability expert. Like, go talk to folks that are in the field that are trying to do some stuff and, like, just really open it up. And you don't have to market it, by the way. Like, you can do a lot of sustainability stuff underneath the hood of the car that is your company or whatever you want to phrase that. Maybe that's a bad metaphor, but, like, keep it in-house of, like, what you're doing with sustainability. And really kind of work it out. And then don't even have your marketers engage with it yet. Like until you're ready, until you're comfortable, and then treat it like a science. You're going to get criticized, which is hilarious to me because conventional businesses don't get criticized for most of the stuff they do. The minute you say you're sustainable, you get a lot of criticism. Treat it like a science, take that criticism and start to decide like, okay, is this going to help us? Can we work with that? Is this just a bunch of mumbo jumbo garbage that doesn't have anything to do with us and somebody's just angry? Like, then you start to really work with it. And it is harder. Like social impact and sustainable impact businesses, it's harder to do it, right? So like conventional businesses, like I hear you. Okay, like good for you. Can you do it with one hand tied behind your back? Because that's what we're dealing with out here. Like that's what it is. So, I think that's kind of the biggest tip I have is like following the money. And partnering, don't go it alone. Don't go it alone. Like, and this community will take care of you. Like, we're all really generous with our time and our thoughts and like our expertise, like probably to a fault. So like, just, get involved.
I really appreciate what you're talking about with collaboration and knowing like your strengths. I feel like, you've said that as a big through line and that really resonates with me as well. And, talking about collaboration, and I guess I'm curious about, do you have people that you've collaborated with that you would recommend, or like, where would they, you say, talk to a scientist, like where would you recommend someone find these people or maybe they're consultants who are willing to engage in this collaborative work as well?
Yeah. I mean, I think like there's so many folks that are and it's interesting because very few people call themselves experts in something, right? And I think that's kind of like a bit of a a challenge in our industry is like, because there's so much to know and it's always changing. We're all kind of a little bit hesitant to be like, oh, I'm an expert in something, but like just folks that are like being active in your industry that have a sustainability angle, like that's a good place to start. I work with somebody who is, his name is Noah Labinaz, and he runs a consulting firm called Common Better. And he is bringing together academics and business to have more dialogue and build better bridges. I think, I worked with him on a couple of projects. He's fabulous. So Common Better and myself, like we're connectors in that way. And then looking into like if you're doing impact tracking or measurement, Catherine at Impactable X is doing fabulous work, and she's working really hard to make her product like really accessible. So she has this software that's, she can work with all kinds of businesses doing impact tracking. She's fabulous. I'm going to have all this up on my website soon, like all the partners that I've engaged with over time. But yeah, I would just start interviewing folks like in kind of your backyard. And then from there, like find a nonprofit that really resonates for you. Like I'm using soap companies as an example. I don't know why it's on my mind so much, but so like as an example, like if you have, if you're working with if you're doing soap stuff, like there's even people like down here locally in Vancouver that do, like soap making with people on the downtown east side who have barriers to conventional employment. And it's like, partner with them. You know what I mean? Like give them your soap ends, like get to know them. Like if you can do nothing on the product side, but you're a service business, get social with it. Like go partner with somebody that's doing great work that is related to what you do. And then just like hang out with them, talk to them about what they're up to, like talk to the executive director. There's so much, like grocery stores and food people. Like there's this organization called Foodstash. They're a fabulous charity. I was on the board for years. And now we have like a whole community of food rescue organizations that work together in Vancouver. And like that model should be in every city. Like we should not have food waste. Like half of our food that we make is wasted. What?
And I think it's more. I think it's like 60% or something. Insane. I used to work in food insecurity as well. So,
so you know,
I know it was. I mean, going to those grocery stores to get the pickups was. I mean, it's so
disheartening. It's so crazy.
I can't even. I mean, I'm at a loss for words. It's sobering. It's shocking. And I think I almost am like, everybody needs to go and like work at a grocery store for a day and see what's happening with that supply chain and where those, Anyway, sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you, but.
Yeah, no, but that like in your industry, there's going to be somebody picking up garbage. In your industry, there's somebody picking up waste and trying to sell it and trying to be social with it, and they have a hard time making ends meet, and they are, you know what I mean, like they have like 2 employees or something. Like in every single industry there's a bunch of nonprofits that are solving real problems. Social impact is real. Like social impact investing, by the way, is real. Like there's a whole movement happening about how to better fund nonprofits and charities so they can be players in our economy, not just the picker-uppers of our problems. So like get involved socially and environmentally with those kinds of impact charities that really resonate with your mission. And then just take it from there. Like there's no structured thing of like, you have to do this to be a sustainable business. It depends on your business, and it depends on what's available to you and where your natural inclinations are and who's in your community. And like, just get curious, I guess.
Yes. Oh, I love that. Get curious. Well, oh my gosh. I mean, I know we have to wrap up, but it has really been such an amazing conversation with you, Brianna. I really feel super inspired. And I mean, your energy for this work and your passion are truly infectious. Like I feel that passion, and it's really, I don't know, it's just given me a lot to think about where I'm putting my time and energy, because I want to bitch, but I also want to make change. And sometimes it's easier to do the former than the latter. And I mean, I think that's where we often do get lost, when we forget our power as individuals and as a collective. So there was one other thing I wanted to ask you. I feel like you've you've spoken to this somewhat, but about sustainability really having businesses having a holistic approach to it, not doing it because they want to be able to advertise it or because they want kudos or something, but because it is truly a like value and tenet that they have in their business. And I'm just wondering if, you could speak to what, I guess, just what your advice is to people in general, young people all around who are wanting to get involved in the sustainability conversation, or wanting to figure out where they can make the best impact. I feel like you've spoken a lot about that, about knowing your skills and knowing where to make your best impact, and I'm curious if you have any advice about how to go about that exactly.
Oh, thank you for that question. I've been hearing this more and more, and it kind of breaks my heart. Like, there's a bunch of folks out there, young folks that are really talented and passionate, that feel like getting involved on a work level has barriers. And so if you're feeling that way, like, there are a number of places you can go to open that up. Work on Climate, or WACL, is a website and a Slack channel that's all about finding technical people work on climate issues. And they're like, I don't know, 20,000 people in there. Like, it's not small. In BC, we have like another Slack channel that's run by this fabulous organization called Scale Collaborative. And we're like, it's a collective of people that are sustainability professionals. We want to post events there. We want to help people get involved. We want to hire people from there. You know what I mean? Like, there's a couple of Slack groups that I think are great if you want to work in this space. And it's, I think, on like, where to put your time and energy. Just find your clear passion, like your niche. Like, if you are someone who's like, where are the butterflies? And you're really into butterflies, as Queen Bey would say, like, be about it. Like, be about it.
Yes.
And just like be proud and loud about it. And then like letting that energy be what restores you. Because anger, listen, there's a time and place for anger. What I've learned about anger is, like, for me personally, I need to like burn off or expel the physicality of it. And then I can get into the clarity that anger is trying to deliver.
Yeah.
Work with the physicality first, because then you can come in strong rather than hot. It's different. Because if you come in hot, you burn people, right? If you come in strong, they'll listen and they'll be like, wow, there's passion here, right? So there's a difference. And anger can be really easily misdirected, including to yourself. Mm-hmm. Be careful about how you talk to yourself. Be kind to yourself. Be compassionate for what you're feeling and all that pain about what's going on. Like, this hurts, man. This hurts. Yeah. I get it. Come at it from a place of like, and I am here. And I am here. And I have something that I have to offer. Let me be intentional about what that is. And let me share my passion with people who get it, who can help be a sounding board, so I can feel refilled and restored rather than just like yelling at people in one direction. It's just like, find your community with it. Get help. Get in community. Get passionate. It's okay to be angry. And like, you know what? Like, I'm a millennial, right? Like, I'm very much a millennial, and it's like, mm-hmm. I'm doing my best. I get it. And like, if we haven't like turned this ship, like, I think this is like a huge vessel. You can't just like crank it one way and be like, oh, everything's changing. It's like, you have to turn the vessel. And if we haven't turned the vessel enough by the time I'm like, whatever, 15, coming into those years of like, that's when like upper management stuff will happen. Like, if we haven't figured that out by then, I will burn it down with you. You know what I mean? Like, it does not deserve to survive then. And companies fail all the time. Entire industries will die overnight. It happens all the time. We need to stop protecting those industries that refuse to change. Okay? Like, and I'm with that. I am with that. I also like to work in the belly of the beast and at scale. So like, I'm dealing with materials by the like, whatever, thousands of pounds and tons and whatever. It's like, that's where I can affect change. So I'm going to absolutely try. I don't really care that much about like some one-off company that's like managed to like upcycle a t-shirt one time. It's like, that's cute. And there's marketing value to that, but like, can you do it at scale? That's where impact lives, right? So anyway, all that to say, passion and anger are like it's two sides of the coin.
Yes.
Just like, don't live in anger so much, because it's too much, man. Like, channel it, get clear with it. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to be upset. You know, just find your peers, find those people that fill your cup. And if you don't have one, get at me.
Yeah.
I'm here for you.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm really just, I know I already said it, but I'm just struck by what a humanist you are, and how I feel like it's just so reassuring to hear someone like you in these, in these spaces that I like, like you just said, thinking about how do we maintain the operations to move 10,000 pounds of product or whatever, but how do we also treat people like human beings while we're doing that? And how do we also understand and listen to people and are compassionate as well? And it feels good to know that people are doing that and care about that and care about humanity, and not in a way that's shaming people. And I'm enough of the shame. We've had too much shame.
It's not doing anything, you guys.
Not doing anything. It's making us hate ourselves. It's terrible.
Totally.
Yeah. Well, I know I've taken a good amount of your time, but again, I mean, I really just cannot say thank you enough. This has been such an enjoyable conversation. I want to talk to you for 3 hours, and I want to ask you to define every word, every, buzzword that exists, but, I know we do have to go. So truly my last question, I just want to know if there was anything that you wanted to share. Or any, any last piece of information or advice, or just something off the heart that you wanted to say before we finish, before we wrap up.
Yeah, thank you. I will shamelessly plug some projects that I'm working on.
Yes.
Right. So there's 3 ways that I work right now. And if you are starting something, or you have a product that you want to figure out how to like activate that, I create plans with folks like that in that position, and it helps you ramp up into being a really great like founder-led salesperson, or getting to a point where you can hire a salesperson. So like, there's ways that I help startups. That's like, I make the plans, and I can help with the structure. And then there's also, I work in a sales agency, and that is a bit like, just we're dealing with volume. And so you have to have a lot of established sales to kind of get into that agency level with me. But like first step is to kind of like get you off the ground. And that stuff I do one-on-one consulting. The agency is a different model, but we are looking for those sustainable brands that are in the BC market, that want to grow in the BC market. So if that's you, come talk to me. We're looking to set up for 2025 with bringing on a new sustainable brand into the agency. And then, sorry, Matt, my business partner. And then third is one of the clients I'm working with is called Plastics for Change, or Fabrics for Change. There's two names to describe the same organization. They make t-shirts out of recycled plastic, and they have the most transparency I've ever seen behind their recycled plastic. And they create beautiful social infrastructure in India, where a lot of plastic waste is happening, and create value for plastic waste by creating material. And now they have products like t-shirts and other merchandise. So if you're a company who uses merchandise, please come to me. I would love for these products to get in people's hands. They're the number one seller of rPET in India, and they're not here in North America yet. So be the first. They're fabulous. They do things with brands like that you can track the impact. They also do packaging. So like, they work with Garnier, Body Shop, those kinds of companies. But you can actually track on the bottle level what social impact your purchase is happening from the plastic, which is like bananas. So Plastics for Change, I want to plug them because they're lovely, and they're my guys. So yeah, if you need merchandise, come to me. If you need a sales strategy, come to me. If you're a sustainable product company that wants to do more sales in BC, also want to hear from you.
I love that. And I also really appreciated, just to mention, I saw on your website how you have accessibility options for people who might not be able to, maybe are, like you said, a startup, maybe a little bit low on cash right now. And so I really appreciate that. I think that's such a great thing that you've offered up or shown people ways that they can still access your services in a way that is comfortable and feasible for them. So
it actually will help you with investment. So if you're looking for investment and you have a sales strategy in your pitch deck, like I can help you build that. So then you can get there, right? Then you can get there. So yeah, I mean, I love it. I love a good startup, but it's, that's where I do structure, but there's not quite enough there for me to really get in there and be a doer, but I am happy to help with some structure and setup and systems with it.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. Well, thank you again. I'd love to do our little tree planting segment if you're up for it before we head off. So sure. As you guys know, we are partnering with One Tree Planted, and for every guest that we have on our podcast, we're going to sponsor them to plant a tree in a location of their choice. So Brianna, do you want to share with us what tree you've decided to choose?
Yeah, so I love that you all are doing this. Thank you for my tree. What a gift. And I'm really big on Latin America as a place where reforestation is super powerful, in part because I used to work with an organization called Taking Root. It's a Canadian organization that does tree planting in Nicaragua. But what I learned is I really want to trust the experts on this. So I want folks to the folks that are in that region to make the decision about where this tree needs to go. That's the now thing that needs to happen. So I'm going to leave it open and just simply pick the region if that's possible.
Yes, I think that's perfect. I feel like that is so in line with your entire ethos, which is like, let me find the person who knows best and let them make the decision, because I don't know best about everything. But I mean, that's, we forget to do that. We forget to seek help, and we forget that to collaborate. But anyway, truly, Brianna, it has been seriously such a pleasure. I know I've said that a million times, but I've just so enjoyed talking to you. I've so enjoyed your spirit and your intelligence and your, just the information that, and I love people like that. I love being able to draw, you remind me, I'm like, I need to find the experts and talk to them.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you're really engaging, and I really appreciate being here. I thank you so much for this platform. Like, I know I said I'm like a little bit behind the scenes and what have you, but it does feel really nice to share more broadly information that I can. And I'm also on the journey. So, it's humbling to hear words come out of my mouth, and then I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, hopefully that's still the case. Like,
yeah.
So yeah, thank you for the opportunity. Really, really thank you.
Oh, of course. We so appreciate you. So, I guess this is goodbye. Thank you so much again. You take care, Brianna, and we will talk soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Fran. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you for tuning in to our podcast, Marketing for What Matters. You can find us on Apple, Spotify, Google, or Pandora. Love the show? Leave us a review and follow us on social media at Peaceful Media to stay up to date about new episodes. And as always, thank you to this earth for giving us all we've ever needed. See you next time.